Good evening and welcome to the Hairenik Media Newscast, bringing you the latest headlines from the homeland and the region, along with sports news and more. Critics are raising alarms over what they call the Armenian government's misleading portrayal of the country's economic health. Despite Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's repeated claims that there are no financial problems, they point to rising state debt, declining trade, stagnant wages, and increased living costs as signs of a deepening crisis. Armenia's foreign trade turnover has seen a sharp decline, with official statistics showing a 16.6% drop in June 2025 compared to the same period last year. Exports fell by 15.9%, while industry shrank by about 2%. Even more concerning, the first half of 2025 recorded a 45% drop in trade turnover, including a staggering 52.8% decrease in exports, 39.6% in imports, and a 12.1% fall in industrial output. Andranik Tevanyan, head of the opposition bloc Mother Armenia, accused Pashinyan of masking the crisis with what he called cheap propaganda, focusing public attention on busy cafes and vacation spots rather than the deteriorating economy. In addition to the trade downturn, critics highlight that the national debt has surged to 13.5 billion. Meanwhile, the minimum wage remains at 75,000 dirhams, pensions are still below subsistence levels, and public transport fares in Yerevan have increased by 50 to 300%. They also note reductions in aid for displaced residents from Artsakh and accuse the government of turning a blind eye to corruption and misuse of funds. Together, these developments have fueled growing public concern over the government's transparency and the long-term direction of Armenia's economy. To make matters worse, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan has cited public celebrations during the Vardavar festival as proof that Armenians are living in good conditions. In a Facebook post, he highlighted that over 50,000 people gathered on the shores of Lake Sevan, most traveling from Yerevan and other regions, arguing that such trips involve expenses and therefore signal economic well-being. He also pointed to busy restaurants and a rise in Armenians vacationing in Europe as further evidence of prosperity. However, Pashinyan made no mention of the government's unfulfilled economic promises, the poverty rate exceeding 20%, or the country's high unemployment. He also omitted reference to the average pension of just 49,000 dirhams, still far below the consumer basket, despite earlier pledges to raise it by 2026. The Armenian government is facing backlash for spending 6 million in public funds on a Jennifer Lopez concert in Yerevan, amid nearly 1.5 billion in ongoing international arbitration claims. Critics call the event a tone-deaf extravagance, arguing it undermines confidence in the country's financial priorities. This decision has surprised many people in Armenia, especially because the spending was not made public until just days before the event. Many argue the funds could be better spent on solving real problems in Armenia, such as national security, local development, and supporting struggling communities. They point out that 6 million is more than the entire yearly budgets of many small towns and villages in the country. The Armenian government is currently defending itself against multiple international arbitration cases involving sectors like mining, waste management, and aviation, and unresolved claims still pose serious risks to the country's financial stability. Prime Minister Pashinyan dismissed the backlash as a stampede mentality, but public frustration continues to grow. The Court of Appeals has rejected motions seeking the release of Archbishop Ajapahyan, the primate of the Shirak Diocese, who has been recognized by many as a political prisoner. The Archbishop was arrested on June 28, and according to his legal team, the court is expected to reconsider the matter during the preliminary hearings of the main case. The decision has drawn strong condemnation from the Mother See of Holy Echmiadzin, which issued a statement denouncing the court's ruling. Church officials described the Archbishop's continued detention as a punitive measure aimed at suppressing freedom of speech and a direct consequence of the government's anti-church policies and hate speech against clergy. Calling the arrest groundless, the Mother See urges judicial and prosecutorial authorities to release Archbishop Ajapahyan immediately. Armenia's honorary consul in Yekaterinburg, Russia, Narek Spartakyan, has reportedly been dismissed after publicly defending the Armenian Apostolic Church and criticizing the Prime Minister's recent actions against church leadership, including the arrest of businessman Samvel Karapetyan. Spartakyan called these moves unacceptable, leading to his removal, which Armenia's foreign ministry has neither confirmed nor denied. The development comes amid growing tensions between the Prime Minister and Catholicos of all Armenians Karakin II. Opposition groups have strongly condemned the government's stance, warning of potential unrest as Pashinyan pushes to liberate the church's historic headquarters in Echmiadzin. Political analyst Avedik Chalabyan warned that Prime Minister's campaign against the church will backfire, noting that even his own party does not support it. He added that such actions could lead to criminal charges under Article 209 of the Criminal Code, which prohibits interference in religious affairs. Speaking on the upcoming elections, Chalabyan said Pashinyan is not invincible, but stressed the opposition must work harder to defeat him. We will remove Pashinyan through the elections and hold him legally accountable and send him to prison for his unlawful actions, he stated. The health of political prisoner Alvan Arshakyan, a supporter of the Sacred Struggle movement, has reportedly worsened significantly, according to his lawyer. Artsakh, who suffers from limb impairments and complications from past cancer treatment, is among more than 30 political detainees currently held in Armenia, many of whom are said to be in poor health. On June 25, Armenian authorities launched sweeping raids targeting opposition figures and members of the Sacred Struggle movement, accusing them of plotting terrorist acts and attempting to seize power. 16 individuals, including movement leader Archbishop Ajapahyan, were detained and sentenced to 2 months in jail. A court has found Aram Navasardyan guilty in the death of Sona Mnatsakanyan, who was fatally struck by a vehicle in Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's motorcade 3 years ago. The court confirmed that Navasardyan was speeding at the time of the incident, leading to Mnatsakanyan's death. The final verdict will be announced on August 13. After the accident, Navasardyan fled the scene, while the rest of the motorcade continued without stopping. Navasardyan's defense argues that he is also a victim, claiming he was ordered to speed by a superior. However, the radio recordings that could verify this claim have reportedly gone missing. Rafi Aslanyan, Mnatsakanyan's lawyer, has formally requested a thorough investigation into the disappearance of the convoy's radio communications. The Armenian government has approved the use of BTR-80 and BRDM-2 armored vehicles by the police guard, both classified as heavy military equipment. Though framed as part of a counterterrorism policy, critics warn this marks a troubling shift toward militarized domestic policing, raising concerns about civil liberties and protest suppression. Some analysts also see the decision as indicative of a broader shift in government strategy, from public dialogue to increased use of force. Armenia's Justice Minister Serbuy Galyan has stated that if the electricity networks of Armenia is nationalized, compensation to its current owner, Samvel Karapetyan, would be required under Armenian law. She emphasized that any nationalization or state appropriation based on public interest must include financial compensation, and noted that no government official has proposed bypassing this legal obligation. Karapetyan, currently in pretrial detention, has launched international arbitration proceedings, alleging that Armenia violated investment protections. While a Stockholm arbitration panel issued an emergency ruling in his favor, Galyan noted that Armenian courts could refuse to enforce the decision if it is found to contradict public order. Wildfires along the eastern border of occupied Artsakh have endangered nearly 100 historical and cultural monuments over the past week. The flames have reached key sites including the Dikranagert Historical Cultural Reserve, the Amaras Monastery Complex, and numerous landmarks near Talish and surrounding villages. According to reports on social media, the historic mulberry orchards of Norshen have already sustained damage. Fires have also spread to the villages of Nakhichevanik and Seydishen, placing churches and other cultural significant structures at immediate risk. While Azerbaijani authorities claim more than 600 firefighters have been deployed, Artsakh officials warn of deliberate Azerbaijani negligence in firefighting, resulting in further damage to monuments, churches, and the natural beauty of Artsakh. facilitating their eventual destruction and erasure from the map. The Artsakh Ministry of Culture asserts that the current fires are deliberately set by the Azerbaijani occupation regime, mirroring tactics used during the 2020 war when banned phosphorus weapons were used to ignite forests in Artsakh. As devastating forest fires ravage Artsakh, Yerevan remains disturbingly indifferent, preoccupied with petty political battles while an existential crisis unfolds. By officially recognizing Artsakh as Azerbaijani territory, the government has effectively dismissed these fires as Azerbaijan's internal matter, choosing silence over action. They are quick to show sympathy when disasters strike Turkey, yet turn a blind eye when Armenian lands and heritage are under direct threat. Meanwhile, in the capital, life continues unaffected. Tourists and locals lounge obliviously as if nothing is at stake. This apathetic complacency is not just neglect, it is a betrayal of the Armenian people and their history. The Azerbaijani Occupation Administration demolished a monument dedicated to Armenian-Russian seascape painter Hovhannes Ayvazovsky in Stepanakert on his birthday. Installed in 2021 to honor cultural ties, its destruction highlights Azerbaijan's ongoing campaign to erase Armenian presence in occupied Artsakh. Russia has sharply condemned the incident, calling it a hostile, culturally disrespectful act by Azerbaijan. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova expressed her disapproval on social media, sharing images of Ayvazovsky's iconic seascapes and stating, "These are the works of Ayvazovsky. Somewhere they are dismantling his monuments, and I am dismantling the illiteracy of those who have never seen his paintings." Mikhail Shvitkoy, the Russian president's special envoy for international cultural cooperation, called the demolition a demonstrative, unfriendly act toward Russia and a clear violation of cultural respect. Meanwhile, Konstantin Zatulin, deputy chairman of the Federation Council's Committee on CIS Affairs, described the act as state-sponsored vandalism by Azerbaijan. The controversy escalated further after Azerbaijan demanded an apology from Russian news agency TASS for referring to the city of Stepanakert by its Armenian name. Following pressure from Baku, TASS removed the reference. The demand came just days after the demolition of the Ayvazovsky monument, part of Azerbaijan's ongoing campaign to erase the Armenian presence in Artsakh. Meanwhile, Crimea has offered to take and restore the statue of Ayvazovsky. Crimean leader Sergei Aksyonov emphasized that the monument should not be destroyed, but preserved and displayed in a dignified setting. He condemned the destruction of cultural monuments, warning that such actions bring no honor to anyone. A disturbing development in Azerbaijan's educational system is drawing criticism from experts. Political scientist Stepan Danielyan reports that Azerbaijani textbooks are promoting a controversial theory, claiming that so-called historical Armenians no longer exist. According to this theory, modern Armenians are the descendants of gypsies, implying they have no historical claim to the region. Danielyan warns that this narrative mirrors dangerous ideologies once seen in Nazi Germany, which pose a threat not only to Armenia, but also to neighboring multi-ethnic countries such as Iran and Russia. Families of 23 Armenian hostages held in Baku are urgently seeking answers after Azerbaijan barred the International Committee of the Red Cross from visiting the detainees. With ICRC access blocked and other international agencies like UNICEF withdrawing from Azerbaijan, there's growing concern over the hostages' well-being and the fate of Armenian cultural heritage in Artsakh. Without independent monitoring, Armenian captives risk mistreatment, neglect, and enduring abuse away from public scrutiny. Families are demanding a meeting with Prime Minister Pashinyan, worried the issue is being sidelined in peace talks with Azerbaijan. Russia has launched a major humanitarian aid program to support approximately 30,000 Armenians forcibly displaced from Artsakh following Azerbaijan's 2023 military offensive. Coordinated by the Russian Humanitarian Mission and the Eurasia NGO, the Russia is With You campaign began on July 31 and will deliver over 140 tons of aid throughout August across Armenian cities such as Masis, Abovyan, Gyumri, and Ghapan. The initiative provides essential food, hygiene products, and special packages for families with small children, prioritizing vulnerable groups including the elderly, disabled, and families who lost breadwinners. During a visit to Syunik, President Vahagan Khachatryan voiced support for opening the full 43-kilometer Gates of Syunik corridor, calling it a path to economic development and regional prosperity. He praised the Prime Minister's Crossroads of Peace plan and stressed Armenia's commitment to signing a peace deal with Azerbaijan as soon as possible. Iran has issued its strongest warning against Azerbaijan's proposed Zangezur Corridor through Armenia to Nakhichevan, denouncing it as a U.S. and Israel-backed geopolitical maneuver aimed at isolating Iran and Russia while destabilizing the region. Ali Akbar Velayati, senior advisor to Iran's supreme leader, cautioned that the project is also being pushed by Pan-Turkic movements pursuing their own strategic ambitions. He warned the corridor poses a direct threat to Iran's territorial integrity and national security. Velayati argued that the initiative is part of a broader Western strategy, driven by the U.S., Israel, NATO, and Pan-Turkic forces, to shift geopolitical pressure from Ukraine to the South Caucasus and undermine Iran's regional influence. Declaring that Iran's national security is our red line, he noted that Tehran has already deployed forces to its borders and adopted a policy of active prevention rather than passive reaction to confront these threats. Meanwhile, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian has urgently called for strengthening ties with neighboring countries, including Armenia, emphasizing that stronger regional cooperation is essential for countering Western sanctions and advancing economic integration. Turkey's ambassador to Azerbaijan, Birol Akgün, announced that the Turkish-Armenian border could open, but only if Armenia signs a peace deal and meets conditions related to the controversial so-called Zangezur Corridor. He emphasized that Turkey and Azerbaijan continue to treat regional normalization as a single coordinated process, highlighting that the corridor was of utmost importance to Turkey, Azerbaijan, and the entire Turkic world. Energy resources and logistical flows will soon be directed to Turkey through the Zangezur Corridor, Turkish Minister of Energy Alparslan Bayraktar announced at the Turkey-Syria gas pipeline opening. Currently, Azerbaijan supplies electricity to Turkey through Georgia. The corridor will become the main logistics route from Central Asia through Azerbaijan to Turkey and then to Europe, Bayraktar said. A new report from Amnesty International reveals that Azerbaijan no longer has any independent media outlets, with pressure on critical journalists reaching unprecedented levels. The human rights organization accuses authorities of escalating repression through arbitrary arrests, fabricated charges, unfair trials, and harsh prison sentences under severe conditions, particularly targeting reporters from independent national media. The crackdown intensified ahead of the 2024 COP29 summit and further deteriorated afterward. Amnesty is calling on Baku to immediately release all journalists in prison for political reasons and urges the international community to keep press freedom in Azerbaijan high on the global agenda. Starting in September, Armenian ninth graders will study a newly renamed textbook, History of Armenia, replacing the former History of the Armenian People. Education Minister Zhana Andreasyan shared the change on Facebook, posting the book's cover and introduction, highlighting the period from the late 19th to early 21st century, labeled as the restoration of the state. The change has sparked criticism from educators and the public, with historians warning of methodological flaws and the exclusion of Armenians' broader historical and diaspora legacy. Critics argue that the revision minimizes the historical heritage of the Armenian people and was made without adequate expert consultation. Renaming the subject has been criticized as an anti-national initiative, as the term History of Armenia traditionally refers to a broader historical scope, including the origins of the Armenian people from Haik to Urartu, the Armenian kingdoms, and the diaspora's rich legacy. In contrast, the modern Armenian state emerged only about 2 centuries ago, largely in the aftermath of the Armenian genocide and the loss of the independence. And finally, Armenian athletes are making headlines with standout performances across multiple sports on the international stage. In gymnastics, Hamlet Manukyan claimed gold in the pommel horse at the World University Games in Germany with a score of 14.933. Teammate Mamikon Khachatryan also reached the finals, finishing 7th. In shooting, Hovannes Margaryan won gold in the men's individual 50-meter event at the European Running Target Championship in France. The Armenian men's team took bronze, while the women's team earned silver. Lilit Mkrtchyan added to the success with an individual bronze. In wrestling, Janes Nazaryan became the U17 Greco-Roman Wrestling World Champion in the 65-kilogram category after a narrow 5-4 victory over Georgia's Erekle Tavberidze in the final held in Athens. Meanwhile, in weightlifting, Grigor Ghazaryan was crowned the 2025 European Junior Champion in Madrid, setting multiple European junior records. Competing in the 84-kilogram category, Ghazaryan lifted a total of 338 kilograms, 148 kilograms in snatch, and up to 190 kilograms in clean and jerk, securing gold across the board. That's all for tonight's broadcast. Thank you for joining, and don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X. Good night.